Hello, it's Clockwork. Today I want to talk about Sly Cooper 5. So Sly Cooper 5 was supposedly leaked recently via a 4chan post claiming that the game exists, which was then corroborated by a Reddit user by the name of Special Nick. Uh, Nick claims that Sly Cooper 5 has begun the early stages of development by an as of yet unknown developer. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably immediately roll your eyes at this and think these leaks very often provide little to no substantial evidence that their claims are even remotely true. They usually just go with the story of, oh, I know somebody in the industry and they told me this. They rarely ever actually clarify who that person is, and this is definitely the case here. We have no idea who actually told this person that, and we have no reason to really believe them, at least in my opinion. So, that being said, it's not entirely impossible that this is true. I'm not here to claim that this is like some big reveal. I personally am very skeptical. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out it's bullshit. But I am not opposed to being hopeful, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is totally legit, and maybe we'll see a confirmation in due time. I don't expect it personally. I'm kind of thinking this is going to be one of those non-stories that never goes anywhere in the future, but for now, I am open to the possibility. I hope it's true. I mean, I would love a new Sly game. I've been a fan of the series for years, but I'd rather not get my hopes up. That's not really what I'm here to talk about. So, as a longtime fan of the series, the prospect of a new entry in the games is definitely some of great interest to me. This is what leads me to the topic of today's video. If Sly 5 were to be released in the near future, what would I want to see in it? That's really what I want to talk about. It's pretty clear that if it's really in the works, it won't be made by either the original developer, Sucker Punch, or the new one that would made Thieves in Time, Senzaro Games, since they got bought out by Facebook. So, I don't know who's going to end up taking the reins. That has yet to be confirmed, if this is even real to begin with, but it does show in Thieves of Time, though, that just because they got a new developer does not necessarily mean the entire game is going to play differently. You can say what you will about Thieves in Time. It's easily the weakest entry in the series, but it's not bad, at least in my opinion. It plays like every other Sly Cooper game. It just lacks a lot of the same charm that the first three games had, in my opinion. But I think it's gonna essentially be more of the same. I highly doubt they're gonna rework the franchise from the ground up. I don't think that's even necessary. But the main concern for me comes from the idea that this franchise is nearly 20 years old. It has sort of an identity crisis if they tried to simultaneously bring in new fans and appease old ones. That can lead to design choices that often alienate the people who are coming back to the series after so many years, as well as lack enough interesting concepts to bring in anyone new. Games like the DMC Devil May Cry reboot that they tried to make appeal more to Western audiences, who were already fans of the originals anyway, while also alienating the main audience they had already gained in Japan. So it seems counterproductive to try to do both. Luckily, the series didn't suffer too heavily since they came back in full swing with Devil May Cry 5, which pretty much renewed the series to the great heights it was at before the reboot happened. So that being the case, bringing in new fans to a series while still appeasing the older ones is not impossible, but it is hard. A good example of that happening was in 2018's God of War, which not only expanded the universe from the original canon, but also revitalized the gameplay in brand new ways. So it added in a whole new combat system, a bunch of these RPG elements, and a fresh new chapter of the story that you didn't even need to have played the first three games to understand. You could jump in as a new player having never met Kratos, and you would still understand the plot. Not to mention, it strayed away from Greek gods, went into Norse mythology, which has had an upsurge in popularity recently. So everything it did was perfect. Longtime fans were there seeing their, favorite character come back, but they also went into a whole new side of mythology, therefore not requiring a continuous story from the first three games. That's honestly, I think, the perfect direction for Sly Cooper to head in. They're currently going on 8 years since the release of the last game in the series, Thieves in Time, and it's been nearly 20 years since we were first introduced to Sly and the gang to begin with, back with Thieves Raccoonus in 2002. So, It's a difficult challenge the developers of Sly 5 are being faced with here. How do they tell a brand new story that will still make sense to those who are new to the series while still maintaining the same charm and appeal that brought people on board to begin with? I really would want, I think, the game to develop the most in its storyline and presentation. I love the dry, witty sense of humor the series has always had, with their tendencies to break fourth walls and makes a little bit more mature, kind of adult-oriented jokes here and there, while still maintaining the childish general theme.
And hold down the circle button.
Then hit the circle button to grab it. Yeah.
Press the circle to enter the vault code. Jump and hit the circle button. To landeth safely upon diminutive points, leapeth lively and presseth the triggering device with the round geometrical object emblazoned upon it.
So jump and hit the circle button to land on narrow spots.
That's a rough translation.
I think it's important for whoever ends up developing it to understand their target audience. Majority of the people who played the originals on the PS2 are much older now, in some cases nearly 20 years older. And that being said, the series does still hold its appeal with those longtime fans because of its simple and tight gameplay mechanics and quirky story. It's not to say that those didn't age well. They absolutely did. You can still pick up with the games and play them today, and they will be great. There are certain aspects of them, like the animations and the voice acting and things that are a little corny and definitely very, early PS2 era, but they're still fine. I mean, it's campy enough as it is. The game never really denies the fact that it is extremely tropey and cliche. That's why it's fun. So, something I think a more mature audience, myself included, may be willing and ready to see Sly come back in a much bigger way. And by bigger, I don't necessarily mean that literally. I'm not talking about a massive, sprawling open world like Assassin's Creed now has. I'm talking about, like, short linear levels that it always thrives on. The series always thrives on its short linear levels in similar, smaller areas that are open to tight exploration. So it has little bits of open world to it, but it's still largely consolidated to small areas. And I think that works a lot for almost a collect-a-thon kind of game where you can run around, you can explore, you can climb on things, you can sneak around, there's enemies to fight, there's little mini games to play, and you actually have to go find the next mission in the open world, in the home world. It's a lot similar to things like Ratchet and Clank or Jak and Daxter did, which are both prime examples of games from that era that were also incredibly popular at the same time Sly Cooper came around. So I'm thinking, and by bigger, I mostly mean in terms of the story's impact on the characters. I'm imagining a Sly game where not only the player, but Sly himself has aged. He's grown, matured, maybe he's been out of the game for a little while. He's not so much a big-time thief anymore. He's decided to take things slow, stop being so high stakes all the time. Maybe he's renting out his services, small-time jobs, or helping the police find some of the nastier criminals that he's been faced with in the past. Something like that. Maybe he not necessarily goes straight entirely, but he's just a little bit less, he's trying to lie low after all the shit he did in the past. But something happens eventually that causes his life to be thrown into turmoil again. And he has to dust the cane off and get going, get the gang back together, get things back on track. It's a little cliche as far as stories go. I mean, you have the whole, one last job trope that so many, the Fast and the Furious movies do. People shit on those all the time for that exact thing, but I don't think the series has ever really been afraid of leaning into tropes and cliches. In fact, that's always been kind of the charm anyway, is that it takes story elements and character tropes that are super common and just plays them for laughs and almost parodies them in a really funny way. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, at least in my opinion. I think it would fit nicely with a comeback story, maybe involving a little bit of vengeance and reunion with old friends. It could be that Bentley and Murray are a little estranged from him after so many years. They have their own lives. Maybe they're reluctant to get back into it. They don't want to put their lives on the line for something that it doesn't necessarily involve them. So this is what the problem comes, is having, if we were to go with this storyline, to just what would be the inciting incident that would cause them to want to come back? So to address that problem, I think It would be interesting if both Bentley and Murray have kind of their own individual stakes in the story, something that happens to them to incite them to say, all right, now I'm in this no matter what, we need to get back together and take this problem out, right? So maybe Bentley has his own stand-up position in society. He's found himself a family, he's settled down, he's happy, he's got what he wants in life. So he's not willing to sacrifice that just on a quick nostalgia trip with the rest of the gang. Like, he still cares for his friends, but like, it's not important enough to him to put everything on the line for something that isn't that important. So where's Murray at? What's he doing? Maybe he's found it hard to find a place in the world after their adventures came to a halt after so many years. He found himself in and out of jail a little bit. Maybe he's dealing with mental health issues. This is not exactly new stuff for him. He's always had kind of an identity crisis. He goes through personality shifts like every single game. So maybe Sly tracks him down and tries to get him on his side, and maybe he joins him because he's like, it's the only place he's ever felt like he belongs is with his friends. So he joins up, but he's a little washed up. His old skills are not really all there anymore. It would be a story of redemption, reunification, would be endearing to the fans as well. It's telling a compelling, much more personal story that I think the series could really benefit from. So you have Bentley, who is reluctant to join them because he doesn't really want he doesn't want to put his life on hold for something that doesn't involve him. And then you have Murray, who is there simply because he has nowhere else to be. I mean, his life has always been with his friends, and once that goes away, it's hard for him to find anything else to do. This isn't exactly new, like I've said. Even in Sly 3, he goes on this like spiritual journey to like find himself and stuff like that because he has these identity problems, and I just think it would fit his character really well. So the only thing this really leaves is the inciting incident. We have the problem of what even happens in the story. I mean, I have all these ideas for where the characters are and why they come back, but I haven't actually established what that reason is yet. What's happening that is causing them to need to get back together. And I think that could take the form of any number of things, but the one I came up with personally, it's a little cheesy. It's very fan fiction-y, and I don't expect it to actually happen, but it's just something I thought would be fun. Maybe after so many years of dormancy, the Claw Gang comes back. A brand new head. It could be anyone. It could be an old face returning. It could be the offspring of one that we met before. Who knows? But they come back with a brand new head, and they find a lost fragment of clockwork that was left behind after it was destroyed so many years ago. So they attempt to bring it back using makeshift replicas of the original parts, rather than having access to the originals, which were either taken in or destroyed. The only thing missing is something to power it and a brain to inhabit it so that it has intelligence. That can be where Bentley comes into play. Maybe one of his kids or someone, a family member, nephew, whatever, is like taken by them and used as a means to power the new improved clockwork. So they plan to use his brain as a catalyst for powering the monster. That gives Bentley a reason to now get involved. His family is now there, like somebody he cares about at least, maybe. It doesn't even have to be someone related to him. Maybe it's, I don't know, just somebody close to him that gets taken because they figure they're very intelligent. I mean, they hang out with Bentley, or they're related to him, or whatever it is. They're associated with him and they're very smart. Could be somebody like that. That gives him a reason to come back and rejoin the gang, and Sly, feeling responsible for failing to destroy all of the clockwork parts, makes it his duty to stop this plan from happening. That's kind of all I came up with. It's not anything groundbreaking. It's kind of just rehashing the plot of Sly 2 again, but Sly 2 is my favorite game in the series, so I can't really be mad at that myself. And this is all just fan fiction. I mean, I know there's a lot of plot holes here. It's a bunch of random stuff I came up with. I just thought it would be fun. It would be a good way to kind of have that, like, all the gang has their own lives going on, and they need something to like bring them back and say, hey, let's get back together. You could even have like a little training montage in this arc of them learning how to like be a team again. I think from the perspective of a new player, the story would be pretty self-contained. They would know the heroes just as a former band of thieves trying to get in for one last job, right? It's really familiar storyline for people who are, fans of like film noir or gangster films, or even like Fast and the Furious movies, like I mentioned before, always have those kinds of stories, getting the family back together for one big final job. And for longtime fans, I think it would be heartwarming and almost melancholy to return to their favorite characters who are now without a lot of the stakes that brought them together previously. It would be a reunion. It would be like a coming together again, even for fans, because they would see all of their favorite characters having relatable life problems and having people they care about and having these identity issues and coming back together, learning how to like bond once again and get that groove back that they had previously. And that's something I think people would really relate to, especially longtime fans who have also been estranged from these characters for so long. We haven't had a game in this series in over 8 years. It's skipped an entire generation already. So there wasn't a single Sly game released on the PS4, like not even remasters. This series has been dead for so long, or dormant, I should say, that it's like, it would feel bittersweet to see everyone come back. You'd be excited to see them come back, but then it would be bittersweet to see that they've been struggling since we've been away, and to see them kind of come back into their own after a while. I think it would be really interesting and a little bit heartwarming. Something the series kind of needs, I think, would be a little bit more of a personal touch to the characters. Of course, I mean, like I said, this is all my own headcanon. It's more than likely they would just use the game to resolve the cliffhanger of the end of Thieves in Time, but I still think it's a fun idea to explore and a great way to entice new players, tell a new story without abandoning the older player base. And obviously, I left out a few major characters like Carmelita and Penelope, but like, I can't write the whole thing for them, They'll fit it in somehow. I don't know. If you have any ideas for where you want the next game to go, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you think I'm crazy and this is just me talking out my ass, which it kind of is, I'm just making shit up that I think would be fun, then I would love to hear your thoughts. Just understand this is just my personal idea. I'm in no way actually predicting what's going to happen in the game. I have no way of knowing what they're going to write, right? Like, I'm not saying this is where I think the story is going to go. I'm just saying what I think would be fun and what I would do personally if I wrote it. So I'm basically just writing fan fiction here. We'll see the actual story if these rumors end up being true. And if that is the case, then hopefully it'll be something everyone likes. I do think there are enough longtime fans of the series around still that a new game would certainly be marketable. I would argue maybe it would be a good idea to release a remaster of the first 4 games as well alongside it so that new fans can go back and play the first 3 or first 4, I should say. I know we got a remaster on the PS3, but those are hard to recommend for various reasons, and they're not playable on any current gen consoles anyway. So I would say it might be a good idea to remaster the originals without all of the flaws that the remaster on the PS3 had, and kind of give a little bit of an incentive to play all of them in order. I think this series could certainly survive a total revival in the eyes of the public. Like, I think there is a market for it, either with new fans or with the longtime ones like myself. It's something I very much hope to see. So with that being said, we will see where this goes. I really hope it's true, and I'd love to hear more about it in the future. To cap this off, I will say I've advertised before, I stream on Twitch. My last schedule was Monday and Wednesday, but as of September, I will be changing that. I'm only confirmed to stream at Saturdays on 8 p.m. So if you'd like to see me there, I'm currently playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and sometimes I play Breath of the Wild. I do plan on, in October, I'm going to play some horror games, thinking Outlast and Silent Hill most likely. And at some point, I am planning a full playthrough of the Sly Cooper series, once I can get to that. So if you'd love to go follow me on there, I'll leave it in the description. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.